no one is responsible for you except for you. And the person that you can and should and must put the most faith in is yourself. Truthfully, if you put your mind to something and every cell in your body believes it wholeheartedly, there is nothing that you can't do.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
But thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. I'm your host, Cole Nixon. I'm a senior at Ohio Wesleyan University in Delaware, Ohio, majoring in business marketing with a minor in data analytics. I also play football for the Battling Bishops with a love for sports and entrepreneurship. That's why I started this podcast. I wanted to be able to share the knowledge and advice of sports figures and entrepreneurs with all of you. Just about every week, I try to bring on a guest who is viewed as a leader and motivator in the world of athletics, coaching, entrepreneurship, business, and just life in general. A new episode is released every single Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss Motivation Monday at the end of each episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast and Twitter at Roughnecks Pod C1. If you want to contact the Roughnecks Podcast about potential sponsorship or collaboration, then message us on social media or email at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Shout out to Dante Fair for the podcast music introduction and P&H Studio for the logo. Now let's get into this week's show. Joining the Roughnecks Podcast for episode 25 is Lindsay Karas Stencel. Lindsay is a venture capitalist and partner at Thompson Hine LLP. She got her MBA from the Ohio State University, but she's Buffalo through and through. On top of all the things that she has accomplished in life, she is also the co-founder of Bold Ventures and helped co-found the W Fund, which is a woman-led and woman-focused investment group. Lindsay is also an adjunct professor at The Ohio State University, where she teaches her students about venture capital and venture deal structuring. She's the voice of the podcast Be Bolder, which I highly recommend. There's a lot of great stuff on her podcast. It is an honor to have someone like Lindsay Karas Stencel on the Roughnecks Podcast. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the 25th episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. We have our first guest for the month of March joining us. As we discussed last week, our topic in mind is mindset and attitude. Our guest this week definitely has a mindset that people should mimic. But before I get into that, I want to talk real quick about something that will start before this episode even comes out. The Roughnecks Podcast is officially selling merchandise for 2 weeks. You can now pre-order from now until Friday, March 19th. A t-shirt, a long sleeve, a mask, and stickers. T-shirt are $20, long sleeve is $25, mask is $8, stickers are 1 for $4 or 3 for $8. If you want to pre-order something, send me a message on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast, Twitter, Roughnecks Pod C1, or email me at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. You can check the items that are for sale out on Instagram and Twitter, but joining me this week is the voice of the podcast, Be Bolder, Lindsay Karas Stencel. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm very excited and honored that you are here. It is a great opportunity that you were willing to come do this with me. I actually first met you would have been November of 2020. I guess encountered might be a better word considering it was virtual. Because it's considering that everything we've done is virtual. That's just the world that we live in today nowadays. It's just, even some of my classes are just strictly online on Zoom. So
right. But yeah, even my law school class that I teach is on Zoom, and it's to manage and kind of like teach everyone and keep everyone engaged, and everyone's just staring into the digital abyss.
I would admit, like as a student, like that, it's harder to pay attention in a virtual class. It's you can get distracted quickly, and I pay more attention in person, and that's why some people are like, oh yeah, sweet, online classes, they're easier. I'm like, yeah, but I don't feel like I'm learning actually. Like I feel like I'm just kind of getting by.
Yeah, you're sort of like present. It's really hard. And so I actually I record all my classes so that the students can watch them like multiple times in case they like miss something or, kind of take a mental time out.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't really know who you were when Steve first told us that you were coming to talk, but he kept saying how like big of an honor it is. And, I did some research and then I was like, holy shit, she's kind of a badass. Like you are definitely well known. And, but I messaged you on LinkedIn after that, after you came and spoke to our class. You connected with me and you followed the podcast and everything, which again, I'm very grateful for. But that's also a little side note I want to make to anybody out there who's just a content creator or anything. Like, you want to get in contact with someone, just message them. You never know what's going to happen, because the worst thing that happens is they don't respond or they tell you no.
Right.
And so don't be afraid to take those chances to just message them.
Exactly. The answer is always no unless you ask. Right.
Exactly.
And so why not ask? And what's the worst thing that happens? Someone on the internet doesn't respond or they don't say something, like, okay, on to the next one. Who cares? But at least you shot your shot. And that's like the biggest thing that you can do.
Exactly. So the whole Be Bolder podcast, where did you originally you decide to start the podcast?
Actually, not my idea. I have to give credit where credit is due. And so my chief of staff, Danielle Blount, we were talking so I get somewhere around, I don't know, 50 to 100 LinkedIn messages a week, emails, things like saying like, hey, I like you. I want to be a venture capitalist. How do you be a woman in business and put up with the challenges? And, all these people wanted to meet with me or have Zooms or phone calls or whatever they are. And, one only has so much time to do things. And time is our most precious resource. So we said, how can we go from all these one-on-one conversations to one to many? And so the podcast was born. And so we came up with the concept of Be Bolder because, Bold is our sort of like enterprise entity that I run that has, the nonprofit associated and Be Bolder and some, family office type of investment, 3% of podcasts in the world last year or something, which is like freaking mind blowing because there's like, I don't know, 1.8 million podcasts or some crap, So that was totally not intended, but very, very cool. And I'm very honored and blessed that so many people kind of picked it up and like the content material. So yeah.
Oh, I love your episodes because they're the perfect length too. Cause I think sometimes people get caught up in making these long episodes, and sometimes I struggle, especially sometimes I want that on the go. I got a quick drive here and I need something to listen to that's not the same music that I listen to every day. So your episodes that's what I love about yours is when I need something on the quick drive, that I have something to listen to that's not, like I said, the same music that I'll listen to over and over again. Especially,
that was one of the things too. We kind of said, hey, originally we were like, hey, micro podcasts, like our goal was always 20 minutes or less. And so, I have episodes that some of them that are as short as 10 minutes but you can put a lot of material in 10 minutes,
Oh, yeah.
And, you don't like when you're interviewing someone, it's a little different. Like my interview episodes tend to be a little bit longer because you're unpacking someone's story and all those things. But, the ones that it's just me talking into the void. They tend to be shorter.
You can only come up with so much when you're just talking by yourself too.
Well, right. I mean, and that's the other thing. And so that's why it's nice to have guests. And that's why I kind of appreciate yours, right? Because you get to hear all these other people's story and their stories, and everybody comes from someplace, and we've all fought battles that we know nothing about. And you can take something from that and you can, really learn from a lot of those things. So I always appreciate those.
So I'm going to steal something. You've actually done it before because you've been on his podcast, but I also listened to Betting on Yourself with Michael Rett.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question on here. I mean, you've already answered it, but what does it mean for you to bet on yourself? Because I feel like that's a mentality and a mindset type of thing.
Oh, 100%. So, we've all had our struggles in life, and I know that the one person that I've always been able to rely on is me, because I'm not just a starter, but I'm a finisher. Right. And so I know that I can get anything done, truthfully, if I put my mind to it, and my heart and all the cells in my body are really behind it. So there's been a lot of risks that I've had to take in my career, particularly because venture capital is an industry that, until 2019, 2% of the decision makers in any venture capital funds were women. So that means 98% were men. And so I didn't have a lot of people that I could go to and say like, hey, female, partner in whatever fund, firm, whatever, how would you do this? How would you handle this? And I just had to rely on myself and my instincts and, my knowledge and what I've learned to date. And I know that, at the end of the day, I can move any mountain. And I also know that at the end of the day, no one can outwork me. Like I am a sled dog, right? And I'm happiest when I'm working. So, I know that even, I'm a little older now, so I get tired more easily, but I still know that no one can outwork me and no one can out hustle me. And if someone wants to try to challenge me there, I'm totally happy to take that. I owned several CrossFit gyms in my life here, and I still to this day outperform people who are literally half my age. I lift more weight, I move faster. It's just because like I can go to a place that's real dark that not everybody is willing to go to.
Oh, I definitely would not want to be in the gym with you because I feel like you'd make me look bad.
Yeah, you've probably seen some of my stuff on the gram.
Yes, I have. Yes. But I think you were like, we're already starting to see you're definitely one of the best people for this topic of mindset and attitude. You almost have like that. You almost have your own Mamba mentality in a way. Cause when I think of mindset, that is like one person that I come to mind always is Kobe. Cause I mean, he has a mentality named after him. Like everybody knows what that is. And you almost have like that, I want to say like a fuck you attitude, but it's like a good fuck you. It's not like screw you, I want nothing to do with you, but it's like, fuck you, like challenge me. Like you are open to challenges too. That's what's the good about it.
100%. Yeah. I love that you call it that fucking attitude. Really funny. I was like, maybe we can have an LKS mentality, and you went straight fuck you.
Yeah.
That's so funny. No, but I do, and I honestly, like, I almost appreciate when someone's like, oh, you can't do that. You don't know how to do that. Like, you'll never do that. Like, and I've had plenty of people tell me like, you're not good enough, smart enough, talented enough, whatever enough. And it's like, okay, try me. Because like, I might not be the smartest person in the room. I might not be that youngest person in the room, fastest person, whatever it's going to be. But like, I'm still going to win because I will figure out how to win, and so I feel like more people need to be that way. And it takes a lot to be like really patient and understand that not everybody is that way, especially when you work in big team environments. It's like, why can't you think this way? And it's just not everybody's built to think that way, but I think you can get there. It's just taking small steps to improve your mentality each and every day.
Speaking of that, you said improve your mentality each and every day. So everybody goes through the obstacles, but how do you like get out of bed and set that mentality for the day? Because I feel like that, like what is your, I guess, inspiration in a way because we all have our days where we don't want to get out of bed, how do you get like how do you set your mentality every day? Is there something that you do, or is it just something that you just have?
So every day before I pick up my phones, and because I have multiple cell phones, I'm that human. Every day before I start grabbing at my phones and all of that nonsense, I actually just lay in my bed. And I set my intentions for the day. I would call it maybe a form of meditation, but I'm not like sitting in a, cross-legged pose. There's not like, sage burning or some crap. It's just, I'm sitting there, I'm just laying there in my bed thinking about, okay, what's my intention for the day? What do I want to accomplish? And then I go through, I'm really big on gratitude. And I think gratitude then spills into positivity, right? Because we've got to be grateful for the things that we have, even the obstacles that we've been handed. I mean, I am grateful. I was talking to someone yesterday. She's like, you talk about that you had a brain tumor with a smile on your face. And I was like, yeah, because I'm grateful for it. It changed my life,
every obstacle, like I just heard something, and it's like every obstacle, you are not your past. And like those obstacles help you learn for your future. And if you either learn or you get dragged down by those obstacles.
Well, right. And it's like, look, like I've overcome a lot of things in my life. I'm not going to let certain like smaller things be my problem. So, I talk about my attitude of gratitude. I think about the things that I'm really grateful for each and every day. And, those aren't things that like, oh, I'm grateful for my car. And it's like, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my dogs. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for, my house, my roof over my head. Like we forget that those things are things that people don't have, and I'm incredibly blessed. I'm incredibly lucky. So, I make sure that I thank, the universe for all those things. And then, beyond that, and I'm pretty open about this, back in 2009, I almost took my own life. I was in a really horrible state. I was in a horrible relationship. Like things were just compounding, I was really unhealthy. And, my two dogs that I had at that time, I was going to take all of my antidepressants at one time and just say like, this is enough. And I was laying on the floor. I was crying into my carpet, and my two dogs at the time, Ogie and Stella, came and lifted me off the floor as if to say like, Mama, you're worth fighting for. And every day I think about the fact that they lifted me off the floor, and I will be damned if I don't make them proud and I don't do the things that I am meant to do. Like I fundamentally believe that I am destined for greatness. I don't always know what that is, but I know that it's something, and I'm here to make a difference in this world and make changes and make the world better for people who come after me. And that's what drives me each and every day.
That's awesome. I love that. I like that it's funny that you talked about the attitude of gratitude thing, because the ideas for the monthly topics that I have going on comes from, we had something here called the winner's manual, we call it the champion's manual here. But Jim Tressel, who was the head coach at Ohio State, had the winner's manual and even has a book about it. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, in the attitude chapter, talks about attitude of gratitude and like being thankful for everything that you have. He's like, because he kind of puts it in the football sense, is, when they're running, if they're not grateful to be running out on that field on game day, like how many millions of people want to be doing that? And it's like the same type of thing that like that's a bigger thing, but like it just look what you said, it could be with a lot of even smaller things. Like it could be thankful that you even just have like a friend or to have a family. Mm-hmm. You have to be grateful for things, because sometimes you don't realize how much you need them until they're gone.
Yeah. And, I think it's equally as important to be grateful for every hardship, every obstacle, because I think about some of the obstacles that I've had in my past and some of the things that I've had to do. And, they were so hard, and they were so, you're embarrassed, or, I had to call off an engagement, and, and like almost like right before the wedding, and like, you're embarrassed that you're going to embarrass your family and your friends, and, you're going to make the wrong decision. In work, I've had to have some like really challenging things that have occurred. And I've really had to like step to some people that really wanted to make sure that I was not successful. And, all of those things prepare you for the things that are coming in the future. And it just, how could I not be grateful for that? Because like now I almost like see it coming, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. Oh, you're gonna try that with me now. Oh, okay, well, here's how I deal with that. And so I'm just, how can I not be grateful for that? Every single step of the way, it's been a beautiful journey, and I think there's just a lot more to come. So yeah.
So as we've discussed a little bit, you're a little bit of a gym rat. You love the gym. I mean, 2 CrossFit gyms, and it looks like you have your own home gym, which looks pretty nice.
Yeah. So that's been a wild ride.
Does the gym, would you say it helps your mindset, or is it like a different mindset in the gym?
I love working out, and I think it helps my mindset, to answer that question super directly. So I have a full home gym. I mean, like, 1,000+ pounds of weight laying around, rig, rower, bike, treadmill, all sorts of like machines and equipment and all these doodads and whatever. I love working out. I work out every day, except for 1 day a week, because I'm old now. But 6 days a week, my morning starts with me working out. I eat breakfast, I feed my dogs, and then I wander into my home gym and I work out. And it's a way to set my day. endorphins make people happy, and happy people don't kill people. Elle Woods. I do that, and it helps me blow off some steam. Yes, it's important to be, I think, physically fit. I think that's one of the 4 pillars that I think about all the time: mental health, physical health, financial health, and spiritual health. So that's important. But I love CrossFit in particular, and I'm not going to like be one of those culties, but like, I like CrossFit because you have this really challenging workout that you think there's no friggin' way I can do this, or I can move this weight, or I can whatever. And then you do it. And you surprise yourself sometimes, and you're like, whoa, like that was so amazing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like if I can deadlift 350 pounds, how hard is it for me to have a challenging conversation with some Yahoo at work?
Exactly.
So, you start to think about those things because you do all this like self-doubting, there's no, I can't, or whatever. And then you do, and you're like, wait a minute. And it just totally changes your life. Like, I think there was a marked change in my life back in 2012 when I first started CrossFit, August 6th of 2012. I would tell you there was a marked change in my life because I started to do this. It was fun. It was challenging. There was a community, but most importantly, it showed me what I can do. And I can go to a really dark place in a workout, right? Like, I mean, sometimes I can't see what's happening in front of me because I'm like blacking out, right?
Sometimes though, that makes the best workouts. Like when there's a fuel on that fire and you go into that workout, because I can tell you how many times I've gone into the gym, gone to the gym because I'm pissed off.
Yes.
Because it is one of the best stress relievers in your own world, and you can do what you want to do. And all of a sudden you just like feel, and that's the thing too about the gym, like, and you go in the mornings, or you do your workouts in the morning, which is good because you look at, it makes you feel better for your day.
Yes. And I've also found, it is really hard for me to work out in the evening because my line of work, like people sort of start making decisions at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and they come to their decision at 5, and then they go home and they call their lawyer. Right. And so they're like, fix this. So my day tends to be a little bit later than everyone else's. And so then I tended to find like excuses like, oh, I can't work out in the evening because, or I'm tired, or, I've had a shit day or whatever. And day with the, sometimes when I'm preparing to go to Key West and I don't want to look like a beached whale. I'm not a 6-pack, like it's fine. But like I'm very used to this. I will work out like twice a day leading up to it because I'm like, oh, I need to look a certain way when I walk out onto the beach, because also when I go to Key West, I come back like 10 pounds heavier because I just gorge myself.
It's vacation. You got to do it. So
you too, like you're there and you're just like, I need this food because I'm here.
Exactly.
Anyway, go ahead.
But I listen to your podcast every week, like I said, and which I highly recommend all my listeners to go listen to Lindsay's podcast, Be Bolder. It's out every Tuesday. I don't know exactly what time it is out on Tuesdays, but
8 a.m. 8 a.m. we dropped that puppy. Yeah.
It's a great podcast. I've learned a lot from it, and it can benefit you in more than just like business. It's like sometimes like your life advice is very good as well.
Yeah, I try.
But I want to talk about a few things that you talk about on your episodes. And the first one, I feel like this is kind of a mindset thing in a way. You do something called wintering. Can you just explain like what it is and like why you started doing it?
Sure. So wintering is a concept of, extreme shutdown and kind of going into oneself so that you can be reborn and come out anew. And so we see this in nature, right? Nature shuts down for the winter. Everything kind of goes into itself. It's not dead. It's just quiet. It's a time of peace and quiet and solitude and thinking, and we see that happen in nature. I would argue that even your computer functions better when you turn it off and you turn it back on after a little while, right?
It really does.
And so that's the same concept with wintering. So wintering, I take at least 1 week. Now I take it at kind of like the beginning of January. I used to try to take it at the end of the year, but I've shifted that into first couple weeks of January. And I shut off my phones. I don't look at my email. I typically go to somewhere like Key West or somewhere more down south where I can kind of still be outside. And I'm just quiet and away from everything. Like I would tell you the first 2 days, I usually just like sit in a chair and stare out onto the ocean and do nothing, because I think that's important to do. And then it allows me to sort of take a time to think and goal set and orient myself for the coming year and just kind of decide like what's important, what's not important. And the reason that I do it is because the universe is funny. If you don't take some time to like settle and calm yourself and your system, the universe is going to force it upon you. And so I am very rigorous now about taking the time for myself. If I don't care for me, no one is going to care for me. And if I don't care for me, how can I take care of everything else in the best possible way? So that's why I shut down, so that I can be reborn again when I come back out. And I'm like way nicer when I come back. Like I just
almost like a recharge and like
yeah. I'm just like I'm just ready then, and I just feel like I don't have the same it's important to step outside of the pressures of life, right? I'm in law and finance. Okay, no one's dying, but like we have these immense pressures where everyone's like, I need this now, and I need to send this now and do this now. It's like, why? Who cares?
Yeah.
And so, but we get caught up in it, and like the level of stress that it causes and everything else, it's just it's a lot. And so it's important to step outside of that and realize like what's important, what's significant, what are your goals, and then figure out a plan to operationalize those.
That's awesome. Because like he's in an entrepreneurial world, like the one thing I learned through that entrepreneurship class is entrepreneurship is lonely. It can be very lonely, and with work comes stress. I mean, there's always going to be some type of stress. I mean, if you work and it's not stressful at all, I give you kudos, but there's always going to be something.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is like running an ice cream shop in Key West. Like there's no stresses. Like you're just serving ice cream to people. They're freaking happy, and there's ice cream everywhere, and you're in Key West.
That is true. I mean, maybe the only stress is worrying about the ice cream melting. I mean, I don't know.
That is like, what if the power goes out or something, and then you just got ice cream everywhere? I think maybe that's
if that's your stress, sign me up, please.
Right. I wish someday. Anyway, but yeah, it's a wild, like lonely road, and I try to explain it to people sometimes, because when I was running my own firm and running a bunch of other businesses, like I would get so stressed because you're never off. Like you're always thinking about something. There's always something to do. And a lot of people, like if they're working their 9-to-5 jobs, which are awesome, they don't understand, like they get to shut down at 5.
Exactly.
Like when you're an entrepreneur, you're not off almost ever. And no one can run at 1,000 miles an hour perpetually. So it's really challenging.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I remember Steve, he would always be like, if you guys like need help on like an assignment or something, or like he's like, just call me. Like, he's like, I'm usually in my office till 2 a.m. So like he was always like there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. And you got to be so careful with that, because it's such a slippery slope. It starts like, oh, I'll stay till 7. I'll stay till 8. I'll stay till 10. I'll stay till 12.
Just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. And then before you know it, you don't like see your family or your spouse or whatever, and you haven't eaten anything, and it's just like a recipe for disaster. So you have to be so careful.
And another episode, which you called Let Your Sparkle Shine, which was, I like that one. You said something that really stuck out to me, and I kind of want to discuss it a little bit, but you talked about, if you have that sparkle, then let it shine, which I love, because that's almost like just be you, be yourself. Yes. But the other thing you said is you love watching the rubber band of karma snap back and slap these people in the face, and that handles it for you. You said you don't wish ill on anybody and everything, but I feel like karma, a lot of letting it do its work is sometimes letting go, and you have to let go first. So how do you let go of some of these things? Because I feel like that's what a lot of people struggle with. I mean, I struggle with myself, the letting go and just letting things happen. But so how do you move past things and develop that attitude that you have of letting karma do it itself?
That's great question. So I'm not going to tell you like I'm not human. Like, do I get mad about things? Sure. Like I get mad. Who doesn't get mad? I am not a vengeful or revengeful type of human being. I don't have the energy for that. I also, again, don't think it's good karma. So a lot of times I'm a super direct communicator, growing up in a world of all men, you kind of communicate maybe a little differently. And so, if I have a problem, I'm a direct communicator about it. I'm like, look, you did this, you can piss me off, you did whatever, like, this is shitty, like whatever it is that you did or someone. And I'm like, I would appreciate if you don't do that again. Right. And sometimes they are fine with it. And sometimes people are like, wait, like, you're so mean. And I'm not mean, I'm just direct. And then I sort of just let it go. And I say, you know what, like, this is not my responsibility to teach you how to behave. It's not my responsibility to fix you. It's not my responsibility to be your babysitter because you are an adult, And I just sort of say, like, I put this up to the universe, and I put whatever it is that you're trying to send to me back on you. So you can feel and understand that. And I do that with love, and I do that with, no ill will or malintent. And I just sort of like let it be. And I fundamentally and firmly believe that, and I think this is probably because I'm a very positive human being, but I fundamentally firmly believe that when you're shitty, like, that's going to come back to you. And it might not come back to you tomorrow or the next day or the next day, but at some point, karma, she keeps score, right? And so you definitely don't want to be like a super shitty human, and you just like let all these things compound, because then that rubber band just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when that thing snaps back, like, I've watched people's lives, I mean, really in just the very recent past, I mean, these people were horrible human beings, horrible. And their lives are just falling apart. And, I don't like, I'm not even like, I don't laugh about it. I'm just like, that's fair. Like, I don't wish ill on anyone. I just wish fairness. And I'm not the judge of fairness. I believe that karma is. And so I just sort of let it be. I also don't have the energy for to spend a lot of time on like nonsense. Like, if someone's going to be an idiot, like, I just sort of like let them go off and be an idiot, because again, like, I'm not their babysitter. I don't have the energy for it or the time. And if someone wants to run around in circles and be a dum-dum, like, go do your thing. I'm not going to participate in this, So again, not everybody loves that, because, especially if you have to deal with any sort of like organizational politics or anything, this kind of attitude and mindset sometimes can go over like a lead balloon. But at the end of the day, I think it's still the right one. I mean, I think my career's turned out okay.
I'd say so. Yes, I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah. So it just sort of is what it is. And that's what I believe. And I think that karma does her thing eventually.
You definitely want to be on the good side of karma. That's for sure.
You do. It's good juju. Put out good juju to the world. That's what
exactly
we always say.
A few final questions before we get into the final segments. I want to ask you, do you have any advice for someone to develop a better mindset or a better attitude?
I think that positivity is key, right? It is easy for us to point out all the things that are wrong with our lives each and every day. Do I have lots of things that are wrong in my life? Sure. Do I fixate and focus on them and only talk about the things that are wrong or could be better or whatever? No. I focus on the things that are great, and then I focus on the steps that I can take to make things better each and every day. And so I think that's what people can do. People think it's like this switch, like you go from like negative to super freaking positive. Like, no, it's a process, right? And that's what I recommend. Like, just start small. It's like anything else. It's small changes in your life each and every day. So maybe it starts out with, you don't look at your cell phone first thing in the morning until you eat your breakfast. And it's just like setting the tone for your day. Right. And so maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe this is another one. You also have to look at who you surround yourself with, because if you're surrounded with negative Nellies and people who are putting out just like horrible energy and they're complaining about everything, it's pretty easy to slide into that. And so you have to ask yourself, like, do I want to do this, or do I want to have conversations not about like trivial things or whatever, or do I want to talk about big ideas and concepts and like, how do we change the world or whatever? And it's just kind of thinking about things like that. But I think really it comes down to how are you, thinking every day in terms of the small things that you can do to improve your life. And then who are you associating with? Because sometimes we associate with people that maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize that until it's too late.
Yeah. And it's never too late, but it is hard sometimes to break up.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. So sometimes breaking up, whether it's in your, relationship life or your work life, is a hard thing to do. I'm a horrible breaker-upper. Horrible. And I'm like in it and I'm like, oh, they'll be better. Like I try to, again, being too positive, I'm like, they're going to see the error in their ways. They're totally going to be different, and then eventually I just have to cut their head off energetically, of course. But
like what you said kind of almost goes hand in hand with what I was told 2 weeks ago on the podcast by my guest, Trevor Garber. He said he's a middle school football coach. And he said he tells his players after every practice, he says, who are you today? Who do you want to be tomorrow? And what can you do right now to get there?
Yeah.
So it's funny how like, that's something I've noticed on this podcast, especially doing this when I have the guest on. A lot of them say this, they're different sayings, but they're all related in the same way. And it's one of those things like, if it gets said by enough people, maybe you should pay attention to it because it might be important.
Yeah. And everybody kind of says it in their own way. And I think that's beautiful because everybody needs to internalize it in their own way to make changes in their lives in their own way. So sometimes you hear something and it doesn't resonate with you, but said a different way, maybe it does. And so I think that that's awesome that a bunch of people have been sort of along the same lines in terms of mindset. So that's great.
So if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
I often think about like, oh man, I need to be the person that my younger self needed me to be. And, now I wish I would go back and just tell myself like, gosh darn it, like just let that shine. For a long time, I dimmed my own light because I was worried that, other people needed to shine or people didn't want me to shine, so I shouldn't shine or whatever. And like, I should have just been shining the whole time. And I think I still was. It was just different. It wasn't quite as out there as maybe it is now. So I think that's the biggest thing. I would just say, man, like stop doubting yourself, love yourself more, and just let that light shine. That would be the biggest thing.
Let that sparkle shine, right?
You know.
So from this point forward, what goals do you have?
So I spend a lot of time thinking about legacy when you have a very significant health scare. I think that's one of the things that just happens. I spend a lot of time thinking about my legacy. How am I leaving this world a better place than I came into it? So the goals that I have are, how do I make the lives of entrepreneurs and VCs better in progressing through the funding cycles? I think a lot about like, how do we make venture capital this not incredibly toxic environment for a lot of founders and startups, because a lot of people fall by the wayside, VCs and founders alike, because it's so much stress and pressure, And so how do we solve that? And I've got some ideas there, but more to come. So I think that's a big goal of mine, changing the way that VC is done and the way that VC treats human beings. I want to go from, I want to see really business return to a very qualitative mindset in terms of, hey, was this work done really, really well? As opposed to, we just worked a lot. Because sometimes you can work a lot and it doesn't matter. Your work is shitty because you're just working a lot. And so I want to think about that more and how do we change that? And I ultimately don't really want to work as hard by the time that I'm 50 years old. I want to spend most of my time in Key West and probably Chicago. I'll still keep my place in Columbus, but I want to bounce between those two places pretty heavily. So that's sort of how I see my life and my world unfolding.
Now it is time for my favorite segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is where I like to give my guests an opportunity to give our listeners a little bump for their Monday morning to start their week. I'm excited to see what you have to say, so let's hear what you have for Motivation Monday.
Motivation Monday. Sure. So I will tell you, No one is responsible for you except for you. And the person that you can and should and must put the most faith in is yourself. Truthfully, if you put your mind to something and every cell in your body believes it wholeheartedly, there is nothing that you can't do. And so I don't care if that's overcoming illness. I don't care if it's overcoming hardship at work. I don't care if it's starting a new business. I don't care if it's conquering something on the field. You can do it. You just have to believe in you, and you have to be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. And that is far easier to do than you would believe that it is, but it is taking a step each and every day in that direction to accomplish your goals and not letting the 1 million things that try to derail you throw you off course. So go get it.
That might be one of the best Motivation Mondays I've had in 25 episodes. I loved it.
So I'm also a motivational speaker. No, I'm kidding.
So the final segment is a quick one, but I like it. It's a little fun. It's what I do. It's called Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire, I'm going to ask you a handful of this or that questions real quick. Just answer them as quickly as possible. Are you ready?
This isn't like anything weird.
No, nothing weird.
Okay.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
New York or Ohio?
Ohio.
Home workout or at a gym?
Home.
Teaching in person or online?
Oh, in person.
Teaching or guest speaking?
Teaching.
Buffalo Bills or Cleveland Browns?
Obviously the Buffalo Bills.
I always like to throw in a fun one at the end that there's an obvious answer to.
Buffalo Bills. I love Josh Allen so much. Like, I always am like, oh, little sweet Josh Allen. Josh Allen is not little. He's 6'7". I love the Bills. I'm so excited that they're like back in action.
I thought they were actually going to make a little bit more of a run than they did this year, but they still did had a good year.
You know, I was just happy that we got to where we got. So like, you have to know that when I was a youngster, they were going to the Super Bowl like every year. And then for 25 years, we had nothing. And the first time that they made the playoffs a few years ago, I was sitting in a restaurant and I got this notification on my phone from, ESPN or whatever, like the Bills go to the playoffs for the first time in, 17 years or something. I started crying. It was in a nice restaurant. I'm crying hysterically.
I think a lot of people from Cleveland did that this year as well.
Yes. No, like I can't even explain it. Like why am I caring about this so much? But like, I was sobbing at Ocean Club, like all over my meal because I was like, in the playoffs, this is so beautiful. Whatever. So weird. Oh, Buffalo. Anyway.
But with that, that's a wrap on episode 25 of the Roughnecks Podcast. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on. It was an honor to have someone of your prestige on my podcast.
You're sweet. You're sweet, dear. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me. This was a blast. I had a lot of fun.
Where can people find you on your podcast and you on social media?
Yeah. So you look lost. Follow me. You can find me on LinkedIn at LK Stencel. You can find me on my podcast is called Be Bolder. It's available on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at legally_Linz. That's mostly my dogs and me exercising. Sometimes I'll turn on. And I think that's about it. I'm on Twitter too at LK Stents and boldly LKS, but I'm not much of a tweeter, so the other ones are the better sources to find fun content. Thanks again for joining episode 25 of the Roughnecks Podcast. As always, don't forget, don't just be bold, be bolder, and keep listening. Thanks for participating today.
Thank you. See you next week. But for now, Roughnecks out. What an honor to have someone like Lindsay on the podcast. She was a perfect fit for our topic this month of mindset. She embodies things that we all need to take note of and learn from. I loved her Motivation Monday, and it was definitely one of the best that I have heard through 25 episodes of this podcast. I highly recommend highly recommend checking out her podcast, Be Bolder, to hear more from Lindsay. If you like today's episode, then be sure to rate and review, and then subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Give us a follow on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast and Twitter at Roughnecks Pod C1. If you want any of that Roughnecks merchandise, then be sure to message me on social media or email me at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. You know the deal though. Until next week, Roughnecks out.
Oh, thank you.